Sir, welcome to Go for Side Effects. How are you doing today?
Welcome. Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, everybody, right now I have Sara Boyd. She is from the United States military, maybe a different year and everything, but let's go ahead and let's talk about, tell us about yourself.
Sure. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Sara Boyd, as you stated. I'm the president and founder of Operation Truth Go For Illness Suffering Unite, which is a 501c3 I put together to bring awareness to vaccine injury and the need for research. And I will get into that later, but to get into my military career, I joined the Army on active duty in 1998. I joined a year before that in the delayed entry program at the age of 17 in 1997. And during that era, in 1997, President Clinton's cabinet was putting together what was called the Anthrax Vaccine Immunization Project. And why I'm stating that now is because we'll get into that in a few minutes. The AVIP program is very important, important in my life, and the reason why I started the charity. And so I served during the Army on active duty from 1998 to 2008. And I joined at the age of 18, like I stated, a healthy young female with no problems. And my parents have no genetic issues as well. There's no cancer in my family, nothing to the extreme that would cause such heartache in my system today. So, as I stated, I was on active duty for 10 years. I went through very rigorous training at the Fort Jackson for basic training. So, as many have stated, that it's Camp Jackson, and as I recall, it was very strenuous through soft stand, marching everywhere through a long time of training in the August heat. So South Carolina for me was very challenging, and I made it through some basic training just like everyone else. And at the end of my training, I recall I had severe edema in my lower legs. And I remember this because my soldiers were stating, what's wrong with your legs? Why do you have so much inflammation? And we had to wear our pumps and our skirts to go through basic training. And so that was my very first encounter of what was really going on with my body at that time. So I went through basic training, and I went to AIT at Fort Lee, Virginia for becoming a fuel system supply specialist. And then something I didn't sign up for was an additional skill identifier that the Army decided I needed to have, and sent me to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for 88 mic training to become a truck driver in addition to fuel system supply. So I went to my first duty station in February of 1999 at the Hunter Army Airfield in Georgia, which was a part of Fort Stewart back then. And I met my first husband, which was on active duty as well. We started a family and ended up having two daughters while I was on active duty. We had a family care plan issues, so we both got out before 9/11 happened. And then, of course, 9/11 happened, and we decided to go back in. So in October of 2001, we both went back in the Army, and I changed my MOS to become an administrative specialist, because that's all I really did when I was in before, because I worked in the office more than I was a fuel system supply specialist. So I was in administration, and I got some really great opportunities working for the top generals at Fort Stewart. I went to Thailand, working for the two-star general during the training Cobra Gold exercise in 2002. I got more vaccinations to go overseas for that. And then I decided I wanted to continue my career. So I went back to school, and I retook the ASVAB and raised my GT score to become anything in the military. So I decided to become a counterintelligence special agent and went to training at Fort Huachuca in 2006 to 2007. And then the Army decided to send me to, South Korea to be part of the 2nd Infantry Division at Camp Red Cloud. So, of course, I got more vaccinations to go overseas to be part of Korea's deployment. And I was there for about 2 months before I became very ill. And on top of that, I had injuries. And so I was suffering throughout my military career. I had a permanent profile for no running. And then I also had a permanent profile for a disease that was called Raynaud's phenomenon. And I had to wear several different types of winter attire in my military gear because of the way that the medical condition presented in the body. So like I said, I had a very challenging 10 years on active duty. And when I was in Korea, it became so challenging I couldn't do my job. And they decided to send me back to the first of its kind at Fort Lewis, Washington, Warrior Transition Battalion. And so as I was going through this Warrior Transition Battalion, they decided that I was found unfit for duty. And instead of retiring me, they gave me a severance pay at 20%. And then the VA directly gave me 60% because I was that severely injured and ill.
Wow.
And then I had to fight and pay over $20,000 in lawyer's fees to get the rest of my percentage and my SSDI that I have today.
Wow. And see, I guess that's one of the problems. I think a lot of us, the Desert Storm vets and even the Gulf War vets, Iraqi freedom veterans, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Afghanistan, I mean, even the Vietnam guys. You know, we don't all know what all we were exposed to, but we all share the same thing. We have problems and we want the VA to figure it out and fix it. And sometimes they feel like there's hope, and sometimes there isn't. Some doctors will say, "Well, let's go this round. Let's go this round." And then, you know as well as I do, dealing with the VA isn't the most easiest thing in the world, but it depends where you live. I mean, I don't know if you got to listen to any of the episodes that we had on with like Greg coming on, all the way from Mike coming on, and Alon and everybody. Everybody has different experiences coming on. John, you know, he had great experiences. I had good experiences. But the problem is these aren't cures. All they are is a temporary fix. And so I think there needs to be a whole lot more research done as far as, you know, the Desert Storm, what the guys and gals, all them were exposed to out there. And then what y'all were exposed to, what possible play did the vaccines have or the PTABs had. So all of us are in this together. It doesn't matter, you know, when you went in. We're all veterans. We're all here to help each other. And I mean, you're probably the first one that I really haven't got a chance to really talk to beforehand. But I know whenever I went in, like, the VA, I was young, so I was like, oh, I'm invincible. Well, then you get older, and then you start realizing, wait, so this is still connected to this connected to this, and back and forth. So, you know, I want to talk about the Operation Truth of the Gulf War Illness Suffering Unite. I really want to know more about what this is about. So let's kind of get into that.
Absolutely. So, as anything starts at there's a beginning, and for the beginning for Operation Truth, Gulf War Illness Suffering Unite, for me back in 2017, I realized that there wasn't any organizations on Facebook or social media platforms that were really talking about vaccine injury, and as opposed to just one Facebook group, which, as we all know, is the Anthrax vaccine related Facebook group. And so there wasn't anything specific to conducting research or what we were going to do, like they have been doing for the burn pits and other types of exposures, and gaining what needed to be done through Congress. And so I decided in 2017 that I would start a Facebook group, and it started with me just getting people's stories. And I had a closed group and was starting to get these stories, and then I realized I needed to do more. Like we need to do more than just tell stories. And so that's when I started looking into starting a charity. And I started the 501c3 in 2019. I applied, I paid the fee out of my own pocket, and we became an official 501c3 in the end of 2019. And so at that time, I decided that what we needed to do, our mission, was research. And I started to grow my team and started realizing that there was a lot of individuals and groups that did not want to talk about this topic. And not just in the civilian community, not just in the government community, but in our own veteran community that didn't want to talk about this topic. And I was so adamant about it can't be the vaccines. There's no way that this exposure, this go-for illness, this chronic multi-symptom illness could be caused by vaccines. And we're not saying that it's caused by vaccines. We're saying that the possibility that for some of us that were exposed, it's been caused as a result of vaccines. And possibly in addition to your exposures from the war-related environmental exposures could exasperate from these vaccines in addition. So there are absolutely evidence stating that myself and others are more prone to getting these types of vaccine injuries. And so what we're doing, and what we have found from an organization out of California, a research group, has agreed to conduct genetic research to determine who's more susceptible to vaccine injury, whether it be adjuvants or other ingredients. And what they have found with the malaria pills, with individuals that can't take the malaria pills, is a biomarker on their blood that prevents them, that causes them to have an adverse reaction. And they found this from seeing this in prevalent in other service members. And so instead of these service members getting this anti-malaria pill, they got a different preventative measure. And so that's what we're going to achieve as well for the anthrax vaccine and possibly other preventive measures once we continue more research and determine what it is. Is it these biomarkers? Is it something more? Is it the way that we are giving and administrating these vaccines? Obviously, it's not a good idea to give a soldier the anthrax vaccine with the smallpox vaccine with another anthrax vaccine within a 48-hour time period. But that is exactly what they did to me on my way to Korea in 2007. So it's definitely something that we need to have more governing of how it's administered and who it's administered to. And the only way to determine this is through research.
Right, correct. I agree. I agree 100%. And that's why there's so many researchers out there that, I've had on the show, and I've been talking with other ones, is there is. And that's where I think we need to change a little bit of things up. I think that there needs to be research for, of course, the 9/11. There needs to be research money for, the vaccine researchers, and then the chemical warfare aspect of it. But they all need to be funded differently, not put into one thing. They need to be separated, and they need to be paid, because what your experience may be a little bit different than what I experienced. So, and I know with me, I have, like the last time I went in for, it was 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I have essential tremors now, where my head shakes, and it's progressively getting worse. And and some people say, hey, you know what? It could be this, it could be that, it could be a part of this. It's not, I'm glad they said it wasn't Parkinson's, but heck, I mean, soon I'm not going to need a freaking spoon to stir my coffee if it keeps going on. That's how I feel about it. It's like, okay, we'll figure out how do we stop it. And then the doctor's like, well, I don't want to give you medicine. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, if you take medicine for this, it's going to totally change your whole entire life. Well, how the hell do you stop it? You just deal with it, I guess. That's the way he was telling me. And
yeah, and it all depends on what neurologists and what specialists you speak to when it comes to tremors. And before I jump into that, I just wanted to speak to what you said about having individual funding. And that's exactly what we at Operation Truth are trying to achieve through a proposal through the VA and Congress, is that an additional CDMRP for that grant, that federal grant to get that funding so that we can have that additional rack, because that is, like you stated, so important for that additional research advisory committee for this portion of this exposure, something they should have already done since the very first 90s, since they started the first research advisory committee, is continue to add additional CDMRPs so they had additional funding. So hopefully we can get that achieved, just like they have for burn pits. I have not seen anything, and I'm hoping that someone can come on and maybe speak to this. But I haven't seen anything where they are stating that they're having any additional racks or additional CDMRP grant funding for this burn pits. So they're just adding these presumptive illnesses for these additional service connections, which is great and is needed. And they've worked so hard and diligently to do. But without that funding, it's just going to tax the VA even more. And it's going to bog down the system, that claim system we're already experiencing. And we're going to have doctors that are even more uneducated and not understanding and having or knowing how to treat and assist these type of patients. So, like you said, we need that additional funding.
right. Well, I got a question for you. How does your VA system work for you up there?
Well, just like you stated earlier, speaking to the VAs being regional specific, I've been seen as a veteran in 3 different VA facilities in the state of Texas, the state of Washington, and the state of Michigan. I'm currently back in the state of Washington because the Michigan system failed me so much. They were good in some things, where they 2 of the VA primary care providers actually agreed that I had vaccine immunoglobulin and anti-sera adverse reaction as a result of the anthrax vaccine. And so they both have placed that on my problem list as being viable medical conditions. In addition to 24 other debilitating medical conditions on my problem list that cause over 60 different symptoms, it's troubling to live with, to say the least, to even get these doctors to agree that these are really occurring. These are doctors or colleagues that diagnosed me in the VA system, not outside the VA system, with the exception of one diagnosis from a neurologist from the University of Washington, which is why I'm back here in Washington State, because they have the educated doctors that I need. And just a moment.
No, that's fine. Well, while you get something to drink, I'll say this. It's like when I first went in back in '94, and I had a lot of kidney problems. I was passing kidney stones that were 1.5 inches big, ripped my inside out. But I was also having problems, and then I was also starting to realize that as time went on, my digestive system was messed up while I was in. But this weekend, me and my wife, we went downtown Houston, and we were going to go to a concert. So we decided to walk. It was a good distance, but, a 51-year-old guy should be able to walk pretty damn far, I think. By the time I got back, my feet hurt so bad. And that's the problem with neuropathy, is that, my doctor's like, it could cure itself or it won't. You have a 50-50 shot. To me, that's not an answer. That's like, hey, you know what? Let's just put a bullet chamber around that thing up, pull the trigger and see what the hell. You got a 50-50 shot. I mean, what kind of crud is that? And that's what I don't think is fair. But this is where Congress needs to step their ass in. Congress and the Senate all need to get together, start passing these bills, and start figuring out what's going on with the veterans. It doesn't matter what branch, it doesn't matter what war, it doesn't matter anything. They need to get together and start figuring this stuff out. I mean, it doesn't, and I tell everybody this all the time, it doesn't matter to me what your political affiliation is. What matters to me is that none of them seem to give a damn. Because if they did, they'd be on TV screaming. I've heard a couple of them screaming, but not my guys who I voted for. And so it's time to change the system. It's time to have the system not work for just us, but work for everybody. And that's the problem we're having right now, is they're too busy fighting each other, they're forgetting about the veterans. I mean, downtown Houston, I drove down there, the homeless rate is incredible. I've never seen so many tent cities in my life. And we saw a homeless guy come walking up, and I could tell he was a veteran. And of course, I gave him money. I can tell what a homeless veteran is. Why are they sleeping on the streets? Because they're having so many problems. The VA's overloaded. It's time for a change. And the only way we're going to get change is all of us working together. And that's how I feel.
Absolutely. Which I'm so grateful for you having us on the shows, because you realize that uniting and working together is really how we make a change. And when you were speaking earlier about the tremors and your neuropathy, there's several different types of neuropathy. And earlier I mentioned that I saw a neurologist at the University of Washington, and he diagnosed me with autonomic neuropathy. And so what autonomic neuropathy is, it's a neuropathy of the autonomic nervous system. And so the autonomic nervous system controls your fight or flight or rest and digest. So anything that your body does in accordance to what those things correlate with is going to be disrupted. And so just me talking, just me breathing, just my heart, I have a condition called POTS as a result of my autonomic neuropathy. It's a very difficult condition in and of itself. As a result, on top of that, I have a platelet disorder. So my body is attacking its platelets. So I bleed out really easily. And so having POTS and that condition makes it difficult for me to stand and walk without passing out, and have various other serious complications. And so at the age of 41, I can no longer drive. I have to walk with assistance using a cane and a walker. And I have several other complications that, like I said, is 60 different types of symptoms. And so the neurologist I saw at the University of Washington actually referred me to the Mayo Clinic. And so I was on my way to Michigan, and I stayed since Mayo Clinic is close to Michigan anyway, why don't you refer me there? And so he did, and I ended up getting a letter back from the Mayo Clinic saying that we're no longer taking patients of your kind. And so I ended up getting 2 more referrals to Mayo Clinic from 2 other different doctors, and they kept me back with the same thing. So we're no longer taking patients of your kind. And so it's all about that funding and that critical piece of how do we get to the right Congress member? And we haven't yet achieved that as of today.
Well, I'm working on getting a congressman coming on here that is running for Kevin Brady's seat. I'm going to try to get more than just one. And we're going to bring all this stuff up. We're going to bring it to them. I want to know what their objective is. I want to know, okay, are you going in to really help the people, or are you not going in to help the people? And I mean, I want them laid out there. Don't just say it. I want you to do it. But it's funny you bring up POTS, because one of the listeners on here also said his daughter has POTS. My daughter has POTS. And I mean, it is interesting. And that seems to be what our children are dealing with is, side effects from what we have. They, of course, they're researching and they're, understanding. We probably won't know until 2082, but hell, but that's the part I'm frustrated because family members don't really have rights to the VA healthcare like we do. Of course, they have outside care and all this stuff, but they need to be able to say, okay, well, if these kids have POTS, let's bring them in. Let's do a genetic test. Let's figure out, did it come from dad's side who was in the war or mom's side who wasn't? And so a lot of people are finding that the nervous system that we have are breaking down. I mean, I know my nervous system is. I know almost everybody who I talk to have some type of neuropathy. Yours, I've never heard of that, so I definitely going to look into that. But, having a group like what you're organizing is great. That way it gets in there, it gets funded for the veterans, and then it won't just be for the Gulf War vets. It'll also be for other veterans later on down the road to know not what to do, what not to do, basically. And so, go ahead.
And the best thing about our research is not just for veterans, and our family members. It'll also be for the public and civilian or global impact this research could have if we were to identify who's more susceptible to vaccine injury. Not only could we decrease vaccine injury, we could decrease vaccine hesitancy because of so many individuals that could possibly not want to get the vaccine as a result of not having that knowledge and knowing that they could be potentially injured. On top of many other factors and reasons why people choose the medical freedoms that they choose. But in addition to autonomic neuropathy, I have tremors, as you can see, that do affect my entire left side of my face. It pulls my head. And like you were stating with yours mine started several years ago, and they still have not identified the cause. They believe that it is a Parkinson's-like condition, but it's not presenting like other conditions. And as you can tell with my voice, I have slowed and slurred speech, and sometimes I speak very quickly, and I'm all over the place when it comes to a medical case, and I understand it's very challenging. And that's one of the major reasons why I've had to move around so much, is to find those educated doctors to assist. And what I want to say for veterans most is that there is an environmental coordinator system, and every VA has an environmental coordinator. And if you're experiencing any type of symptoms that are like chronic illness or chronic multi-symptom illness, to contact your primary care provider and ask them to refer you to your environmental coordinator and have a Gulf War registry exam. That's very important, and it doesn't just occur to those that deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan. If you're having these type of symptoms, you can be seen through the Gulf War registry exam, and you can be seen through risk.
Yeah, see, and that's other. I mean, there are so many doctors out there that are wanting to help, but there's so many doctors that don't know what is going on with us. Like I've been an outside doctor, and I bring in my VA paperwork to him because I couldn't get in for the neuropathy because my feet were happening. And he goes, I'm telling you, it is your B12. And I was like, okay, what causes your B12? He said, well, it's your digestive system. It just flows out. And I said, okay, but what causes that? They can find what's going on, but they can't find the reasoning happening. But as the VA explained it, it can be multiple things. And this is where, I'll say this 500 times on this show, this is where the two hands don't talk. The VA claims division and your VA doctors. The VA claims division dude does not talk to your doctors. You got to give them all the paperwork. You got to give them. Then they send you to an outside jackrabbit freaking place, and then they sit there and they determine whether you have it in a less than a 2 minute freaking. I'm trying not to say bad words because it makes me so mad for veterans. You go in there, the first thing they say is, "How are you doing today?" Well, I don't say I'm doing good anymore. I learned that. But when you deal with places like VES, LHI, and to me, LHA is the only one that I've seen so far do examinations. VES, that guy sits on a computer, types on it, boom, out the door. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're going to get it. And then you get a denial letter. And he shows a whole list of crap that they did that they didn't do. And you know they see so many veterans it's overloaded. And the process is taking way too long. And you can't go in it alone. You know that because you were talking about that. You had to get an attorney for everything. And to me, why should you have to pay that back? Why should that come out of your disability? It should come out of the VA. That you got to fight this hard for it. That's terrible. So we need to come up with a better system for that. Do you think I'm right on that?
Absolutely. And actually, Operation Truth's team has came up with a solution for at least the vaccine injury portion. And as we were stating before, is that additional CDMRP grant. To get anything accomplished, we need more funding. And there's claiming that there's not enough of it out there, but they can find it. And we have to push it and tell them and show them the reasons why it's so important to put the funding where it needs to go. And as you stated, you were going to have a Congress member come on the show in the future. If you could please push and let him know that the 106th Congress back in the early 2000s did an investigation for the anthrax vaccine immunization program because there was so many service members that were getting court-martialed as a result of not wanting to get the anthrax vaccine. And so the 106th Congress did an investigation and determined all kinds of different things that manufacturer was doing, practices that were unbecoming, that they were giving the vaccination against FDA regulations, and that they were presenting the vaccination for 100% of all service members without giving us informed consent and all these other different things. They had given over 2.1 million service members the anthrax vaccine during this AVIT program from 97 to I think like 2002. So the 106th Congress, the congressional members went on to state that we need to take care of the individuals that were affected from this program. And to date, they still haven't. So when you bring on the Congress member, if you could please just inform him of that information, like you already said, that there's still Congress members that were part of the 106th Congress that are employed today that have been reaching out to try to let them know, like, you need to do what you said you were going to back in the early 2000s and take care of us.
Right. And that's the problem. They talk a great big game, but when it comes down to it, they don't. And now I will say this, sir. I'm gonna say this, is that you brought up a really good point about, about Congress and needing to fund and get everything. But there's one other thing we're all missing. We don't have enough veterans speaking. We don't have enough of them getting out there, raising their voice and being pissed off. And that's the truth. A lot of people don't realize the veterans make up a large majority of the United States. And so we all need to come together and let our voices be heard. Not just 1, 2, 20, 50. I mean, we need to share the heck out of all the information we find. We need to share, information on, what doctor diagnosed you this? Well, how'd you go through the claims process? How did you get awarded? Because every system is different in the United States. Every VA system is different. And that's a problem.
Absolutely. And if any veterans are looking to reach out and want to become part of an organization that is making change in the system, we're looking for awareness ambassadors. And we will provide you all the templates and information that you will need for every information booth or any type of uh, you know, level that you would like to be a part of. It's definitely needed to grow our team and to bring awareness to what our mission is and to achieve this funding for research that's absolutely critical, not just for our veteran community, but for our civilian community globally.
Right, right. And on here, as I'm watching this, the Facebook, the guy put on here, if you raise your voice, you get removed from the system, the VA system. And he's right. If you go in there bitching and moaning and groaning and yelling, they will remove you from it. But you can do it without screaming and yelling and going in there. You can. That's why. What are they going to do? Remove every veteran off of that? No, because if one veteran goes down, we should all go down with them.
I'm glad that that point was brought up, and you absolutely have to do it in a way that they will listen. And I'm pretty sure, been placed on the VA's problem child list. They just pass me from doctor to doctor. When one doctor gives up, I've literally had doctors give up and tell me that they will no longer be my doctor. I've had doctors come out and yell at me out in the waiting room for everyone to hear in the lobby, stating that you don't have vaccine injury. That's not on your problem list. You're not my patient anymore. You need to go see patient advocacy. That happened at the Wyoming VA clinic in Michigan. And the problem with the VA, as many problems, is there's no transparency. And so you go to the patient advocate and you say, wow, this doctor did this. I'm sure you heard. And they say, yeah, we did. And yeah, we talked to him. And yes, we're going to let you get another primary care provider. But they never say, okay, this is what happened to the doctor. And we are going to make sure that he doesn't do that or she doesn't do that to another veteran.
Well, see, and this is why it is important. Okay, I do have a question for you in a second, but I want to say this. This is why your congressmen and senators are important. Get to know them. They all have a VA system in them. Go in there, tell them what's going on, tell them what's happening. If you ever get kicked out of VA, that's first. I tell you what, Kevin Brady's office is going to get an ass chewing if I get kicked out. I'll chew it up and down. I do not care. And that's why we need to get the guys, that the old school guys that have been in there, career politicians, and let's put some military guys in there. Let's put some veteran guys in there that know what we're going through. The system will change. And that's why it is so important to go to your local people, to understand them, your congressmen, know what they're doing. And I'm telling you, when I went to Kevin Brady's office, I told him what was going on with me. I had the VA call me saying we apologize, it will never happen again. That's what they're there for. Your congressman's there for you. The VA just can't automatically kick you out because you question them. I mean, they can make your life hell, but they can't kick you out of the system and everything. But there was a question asked by David, and it was like, is there like connected to the Gulf War, like memory loss? Are you having any problems with that?
Absolutely. So when I went through my medical timeline, I put together all my medical conditions I've been diagnosed with since 1998 to present day. And as I stated, I was diagnosed with over 25 different debilitating medical conditions. I also listed all the symptoms that they cause and determined that I have over 60 different symptoms that I deal with on a daily basis. And I went through and determined that I have at least 5 different medical conditions that cause some form of brain fog, cognitive thinking, or memory issues.
And along with the medications, also add to it too.
Well, unfortunately, because of the nature of my medical condition. It has caused me to be allergic to all pharmaceutical interventions I have tried. While I was on active duty, my first medical condition, or excuse me, my first medicine that I was allergic to was Sudafed. And I started having some severe complications with that medication. And so from there on, I was just every single medication from every class, I started having some type of complication. And so that's when the VA determined that pharmaceutical intervention was not for me. And they continued to try to give me different drugs, of course, because it's the VA. But I've been a cannabis patient since 2008, with a period of 2 years where I wasn't a cannabis patient when I lived in Texas, because it was, and still is, very illegal for patients in Texas. And I didn't want to have my children taken away from me. So I had a very troubling time when I lived in Texas,
Yeah.
because I was not a cannabis patient. Trying to get narcotics for pain has been very troubling for the chronic pain community, not just veterans but civilians alike. And it's been very troubling, to say the least, just for chronic pain management.
Right. And you know, also on top of that, you know, because I was thinking about the vaccines and stuff, you know, what possibly could have caused mine? I honestly believe mine was most likely some type of chemical that Saddam released, and also with all the oil well fires that the Navy had experienced while we were out there. And a lot of guys will probably agree with that who were in the Navy. We were exposed to a lot of different chemicals. So I think that's what mostly caused mine, because mine is chemical. That's exactly what the doctor told me. I have a letter that even says some type of chemical is the cause. He can't say it was biological, but he says some type of a chemical in the conditions of the Gulf War. So, you know, on top of that, I do believe people have vaccine, you know, adverse reactions. I do. I totally believe that 100%. You know, and when we were in, it's not that I don't hold it against any of the military at that time, because when we were in, I think they were trying to do the best that they could for what they had to work with, knowing everything Saddam had. So they were like, here you go, guys. We're going to give you, you know, PTABs. We're going to give you, you know, the Anthrax. We're going to give you this. We're going to give you that. Just so that way, if he did release it, at least we came home. And then they were, you know, so I think the intentions were good. I you know, as far as during Desert Storm, I do think the intentions, because I remember doing a month class just on every different kind of chemical the man had out there. But I do believe that I mean, you just said it. Even you taking medications, you have an adverse reaction to it. So there is going to be adverse reactions to a lot of this stuff that nobody knows until we do research on it. I think that's a great statement. There isn't anything wrong with that. They need to get their butts out of their head and start getting some research done. But I think they're working that way. I know, talking to a few people that I've already talked to, there's a lot of research already going on. And that's how we get our presumptives. That they just don't magically come out and say, hey, you know what? This came over here and that came over here, so we're just going to add presumptives. No, what they did was they studied it and said, you know what these chemicals mixed with this can cause this. With this chemical, this cause this. You know, and I do see that.
Absolutely. And that's how they have become, they being the VA, have listed on their public health website all these different exposures as possible causes for Gulf War illness or chronic multi-symptom illness. That's why they've expanded the presumptives to include what the burn pits have caused, all the different lung issues, because they have done this research and they have determined that from this research is causing the symptoms. But what they haven't been conducting is the appropriate research to determine what's causing vaccine injury. The presumptive illness is for that vaccine injury portion. And so as early as this last 2019, the National Institute of Health did conduct a study and determined that there was anthrax to be found in the brains of Gulf War illness patients that had caused damage And so what that is stating that the anthrax that was inactive, obviously, had attached to the antigen or whatever ingredient that allowed it to pass through the blood-brain barrier into our brains of these affected veterans and the service members. And so that we need to have more research specifically to determine this factor, this anthrax vaccine, or excuse me, these other vaccines, and determine the specific research for those presumptive illnesses. And that's what we need this additional CDMRP grant and research advisory committee for.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree. I mean, that's why I think there ought to be separate research findings. I do. I mean, let's get one for strictly for oil field fires. Let's get one for burn pit fires. Let's get one for 9/11. Let's get one for vaccine. Let's get one. They don't need to be balled into one and everything. And let me tell y'all, my VA doctor listens to my program. And so 100%. So, and they literally, and he likes it. He told me, he's like, it's entertaining. He goes, and it's information. He goes, you're getting the word out there. You're trying to get things spread. The VA doesn't have enough information yet. They have enough to know that this stuff caused it. They just don't know how to 100% fix it. And so, but I think this is a great nonprofit, and we're definitely going to put it up on our site for sure. And I hope each and every person goes out there and checks it. And is there anything else we're missing that you want to talk about?
I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity and thank you for the support. In today's vaccination climate, it's very challenging. It's like the unvaccinated against the vaccinated. There's a lot of misinformation being placed out there, and a lot of people saying, well, if you're not vaccinated, you can't come around me. And that's unfortunate because I can't get vaccinated. And there's other people in my demographic that can't get vaccinated. It's not choice. It's because I can't. I physically can't. It will make my body, it does not outweigh the risks for me. And so I have to take other precautions to ensure my safety, just as others that have chosen to, for medical reasons or otherwise, to not get vaccinated. So let's be compassionate. Let's be understanding. Let's stop the division that some individuals and groups have created. And let's get back to what we understand to be the reason for us coming together in the first place, is bringing knowledge to the table, being unbiased knowledge, fact-based, veteran-oriented assistance, helping veterans, because that's really where we are at in this.
I agree 120% with you, because I mean, I got vaccinated, and you know what? I know I have friends that can't get vaccinated because of the symptoms that they have. Their doctor's like, not right now, you can't. But my doctor was like, you're going to go get vaccinated. I had the virus. I know how it felt. I don't ever want that crap again. It hurt like hell. But after I got the vaccine. This comes from the VA, everybody. Listen what I'm about to tell y'all. She told me, do not go get my booster shot. She said, you're fine. She said, I just wanted you to get one. But that was because the type of neuropathy I had, she was more afraid that it was going to attack, because it did. That was the worst thing I've ever felt in my lifetime. But I can honestly say that you're right. People need to stop arguing. They need to stop bitching at each other. They need to step in and say, hey, you know what? There's people who can't get it, and then there's people who need it. And there's the people in between. And I think everybody who really, really need it needs to get out there and go get it. The people who want it, go get it. The people who can't, I understand 100%. You know, it's to me, that's why we fought for everybody's freedom. You know, everybody has that choice. Just do what the doctor says. That's how I feel about it. If my doctor says, hey, you can't go get it, I'm not going to go get it. If they tell me you have to go get it, you need to because of your conditions, I want you to go get it, I'm going to go get it. But I think that's what a lot of veterans' problems are right now, is with everything we've gone through, with them not knowing what's caused our problems. That's what's making everybody so on edge on this, and it needs to come to a halt. Misinformation needs to be gone about it. Let's start listening to the real researchers that actually give a crap about us, and all that. And there is one Gulf War veteran doctor, I will say, and I can't remember her name, but I was introduced to a newscaster from the Gulf War to a guy that I've talked to on my program named Steven, and that doctor said, and was remarkable, most Gulf War veterans, she's not talking about Desert Storm, Gulf War veterans are aging faster than any other veteran group. And they're having a lot more neurological problems, and they're more acceptable if they need to get out there and get the vaccine to get it. That's exactly what she said. She said, but there are some who can't get it because of the conditions like you were just saying. So we need to be compassionate. They just need to be careful and everything. And so, I didn't have any issues. They stuck me in the arm, and I didn't have any issues. But each person has their body's going to tell them what to do. And that's what I go with. And that's what I want you to go with. But I definitely want you to keep in touch with me, please. I'm definitely going to be checking this out. We'll get it up on the website. And I really appreciate you coming on. And see, I talk fast too, but I do it in redneck talk. That's what us Texas guys do. We just talk real fast, and then it kind of makes sense.
Right. I just wanted to say, Operation Truth, we do our best to be an unbiased approach. And as a result of my vaccine injury, I would never tell anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do. And so I can't get vaccinated, so I would never tell anybody to get vaccinated. And for my own personal reasons, I don't tell people what to do because I feel that if something were to occur negatively as a result of what I informed them to do, I would feel deep empathy and want to do what I can to help them. And I can't help everybody.
No,
so I'm not going to tell anybody else how to live their life and the choices that they make. All I'm going to do is inform others of what I have gone through and what the National Institute of Health has conducted in their research has proven, that the evidence-based information is placed out there with an unbiased approach. And what we're about is inclusion, including those disabled individuals like myself who are several of our leaders want to exclude with all these mandates that they are trying to have, where we have to have vaccines in order to be part of the public and society. And I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to do these different things. And with these certain mandates that they're presenting, it would be problematic, and I would more likely not be able to do any of those.
Right. And hopefully this soon goes away. Hopefully all this goes away. Hopefully we can all get back on track, have a normal life again. It would be so nice and everything.
Yeah, it's about inclusion and for everyone.
Yeah.
In the disabled world, we're so about ensuring that we include everyone and their disabilities, and this is one of them.
Right.
But this is one that we barely know anything about. We have touched the tip of the iceberg as to the adjuvant-induced medical conditions and their causes within the bodies. They just started this research in the 2011 when they determined the adjuvant-induced syndrome. So we have just touched the tip of the iceberg of the research that needs to be done on this type of vaccination injuries.
I agree 100%. And so with that being said, we're coming to the end of the program, but I do want to wish you well. And please stay in touch with me. I'd like to know how everything goes. And if you have any problems, you got my number now. You can text me, call me anytime and everything. But I do want to let everybody know that there was a veteran that me and John, we were working with his daughter, and she was having a hard time with her dad. You know, he trying to get help and everything. So we literally, I was able to get a hold of out of Mississippi the head guy for the Veterans Administration out there, and now he's back on track to getting health care for him at home. And so, you know, that's what it's going to take. Like you said, all of us to come together. Let's stop bickering. Let's get together. Let's work on this. Let's get the word out there that we just want help and we want to get things figured out.
That's great news, and thank you so much for all your help and that you do with the veteran community and the support for Operation Truth. If anyone has any information that they would like, take a look at our website at operationtruth.net. And thank you for the opportunity. Have a great evening.
You have a great evening. Sarah, it's nice talking with you.
You as well.
Once again, I'd like to thank Sarah for coming on to this program. Operation Truth, Go For Illness, Suffering, Unite is the nonprofit organization that Sarah's with. And so please go check it out, see what y'all think about it. And I definitely will. And I want everybody to have a great night. Thank you.